Yeah, would anyone like to introduce themselves and ask why you're here, or any questions that you'd like to ask? We've got guests from Australia. We've got guests from Philippines. We've got guests from Malaysia as well. Andrew, nice of you to join us. Thank you very much. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have as well. Yeah, would anyone like to introduce themselves and ask why you're here, or any questions that you'd like to ask? We've got guests from Australia, we've got guests from Philippines, we've got guests from Malaysia as well.
Somehow it doesn't go to the specific session that I set up before. The link, the YouTube link that but I can see people. But I don't see the video.
Okay. Which link is it on currently? I can tell people to go to that one.
The link that I shared with you previously. Let me check.
Okay.
Hi, Kevin. I saw your question. Just give us 1 minute. Let's just get Prof set up, and then we can ask the question openly as well.
Yeah, Erika, I put a link in your WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you. Okay, which link is it? I can tell people to go to that one.
The YouTube live doesn't go to that session that I set up before. So okay, I can see people already come in, but they don't see the session that is live now is actually I don't know why.
Okay.
Slightly different from the way we set up.
It's okay. I have the live link, so I will tell people to go to that link lah.
Okay, so I have to tell also in this one.
Yeah, the link is this one on WhatsApp. There you go. We are live on that link. It's okay. I have the live link, so I will tell people to go to that link. Okay. Yeah. The link is this one on WhatsApp.
Hi guys, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the webinar. We're just currently setting up right now, linking our session to YouTube Live as well. Please just give us a few minutes, and then we will be ready to start soon. In the meantime, feel free to add any questions that you have in the Q&A section or in the chat. We're going to answer as many questions as we can today. Hi guys, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the webinar. We're just currently setting up right now, linking our session to YouTube Live as well. Please just give us a few minutes, and then we will be ready to start soon. In the meantime, feel free to add any questions that you have in the Q&A section or in the chat. We'll answer as many questions as today. Hi, Suresh. Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining us. So we got a real... Sorry, Prof?
Yeah, I have to share the new link to the other groups. Just give
Okay,
me about 2-3 minutes.
No problem. No problem. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. We're currently in the process of setting up. Please just bear with us a couple of minutes before we can go live. In the meantime, feel free to ask any questions that you may have in the Q&A chat. The button is at the bottom. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can today, especially from Prof and Adam as well. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. We're currently in the process of setting up. Please just bear with us a couple of minutes before we can go live. In the meantime, hi, Yvonne. Thanks for joining us. Hope the courses for Epic is going well. I will try to answer as many as I can today, especially from Prof and Adam as well. It's really nice to see everyone here. We've got people from universities in Malaysia, from people from AKPK, Credit Counseling Agency of Malaysia, to a gentleman from Sydney as well. And we've got Hafiz from Indonesia and Blacklist Tech Services. We've got Celine and Kitsyong from Malaysia as well. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. We've got a full, diverse group of people here today, from universities to corporates. Good to see everyone trying to go online as well.
So over to you, Salvin.
Thank you very much, Prof. Is everything set up?
Yeah,
yes,
I think
just to check if everybody's YouTube live is on mute
yeah,
before we start.
done that.
Okay.
Adam, you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, guys, I think we'll just start, given it's already 3:03. So to everyone joining, welcome to our webinar, Best Practices for Moving Your Teaching and Training Online. My name is Sarvin Kandia. I'm the Managing Director of Open Learning Malaysia. We're a Sydney-based SaaS company that provides scalable online learning platform and a learning design services to education providers and a global marketplace of world-class micro-credentials and online degrees for learners. We're kind of like a one-stop shop for anyone trying to move online, move their education business online. Quoting Prof. Karim himself, online learning is no longer a choice. Given the current situation many institutions are facing, whether ready or not, we have to find a way to mobilize and reach our learners online. Today, we'll be hearing from two experts from two different perspectives in terms of what they're seeing and what they're doing to kind of help the people around them move online, and especially trying to help as many educators and corporates or institutions move online as well. But before we start, here's some housekeeping items we need to cover. This session is actually being hosted on Zoom as well as Prof. Karim's YouTube channel. Just a point to note, this webinar is being recorded. So for anyone who's not comfortable, please do be aware of this. We will be recording this entire webinar and we will also be posting it. We'll be posting the recording and the video after the show or by tomorrow. Throughout this entire webinar, we'll be having, you can feel free to ask any questions that you like. There's a Q&A chat function at the bottom or on the chat function for YouTube. Alternatively, we will also be running polls throughout the entire, We'll be also running polls throughout the entire webinar. So please feel free to participate, ask any questions as you like in that sense. So any questions at this point from anyone? Okay, so let me start. Let me introduce our first panelist. His name is Adam. He's Open Learning's very own CEO and co-founder. He's named Forbes 30 Under 30 in Asia for consumer technology. He's also a TEDx speaker on how do we redesign our education to transform people. More importantly, Adam has helped and consulted multiple governments and ministries and higher education and exactly on how they moved online, starting in Malaysia with the Malaysia MOOC program, all the way to working with the Ministry of Education, Higher Education in Malaysia, to multiple universities in Australia as well. Joining us as well is Prof. Karim, a professor of food technology at the School of Industrial Technology in University Science Malaysia. He is the director at the Center of Development of Academic Excellence, CDAE, in the public university space. He's a pioneer in online learning Malaysia. He was part also of the founding team to launch the Malaysia MOOC program. He's a true inspiration to every educator out there, as he does a lot of things in terms of webinars to workshops to all kinds of education material to help people move online. And now recently, he's the man tasked to move USM online, given the current situation. So let's start there. Following the Malaysian movement control order, USM was one of the first universities to introduce a new set of standard operating procedures. You guys were one of the pioneers in terms of trying to move the entire university online. So as one of the main drivers for this, Prof, I think the listeners would like to understand what exactly did you have to do? Because this is relatively new for a lot of people. Online learning, either they were, trying it out or they were just testing it out. But today they kind of have to move the entire university or entire institution online. So how did you manage to, what are you doing at the moment to kind of move USM online?
Well, thank you, Salvin. Hello, everyone. And hello, Adam and all the participants. Thank you for this opportunity to share what we are doing in USM. Well, as you know, a few weeks ago when we start to have this restricted movement order, so we have to stop all the classes and all the classes have to go online. So that actually, there was a point where everyone actually become quite panicky. Although in USM, the history of online learning has been basically around for many years because we are also the pioneer of School of Distant Education in Malaysia. So in terms of online education, we do have some basically preparation. But having said that, I would say perhaps less than 50% of our staff are really ready, fully ready to go into online, especially when we have to do fully online. The difference before the COVID-19 episode and now, we use online as part of the blended learning approach. So it's kind of to complement, but for the other 50% of our staff, they don't really go into blended learning, or they just think of online learning as just an alternative and something that they can do without. But when everyone has to go online, this now has become something that they have to do. So this 50% of really learn a new skill, and they have to put everything, the content wise, the course, everything on the learning platform. So that was the point that I have to step in, and I was given basically together with my team, it's actually a huge task to mobilize everyone and to prepare and to get them ready for full online delivery. So that was actually quite initially quite a havoc, and but somehow, to my surprise, we actually expected resistance, but maybe at least for those groups that have not really embarked on online learning, so we expected some resistance. But to my surprise, and that make our job probably easier, they actually kind of give a full support of what we have to do, and in terms of providing them the necessary support, training, and so on. So the CDAE, the Center for Development of Academic Excellence, actually given the task to really mobilize our people, the technical part. So we work together actually to help the lecturers. So in the end, until now, of course, there are still a lot of work in progress. Yesterday, we just actually published our comprehensive guideline on assessment, online assessment for remote teaching. So that's the thing that we do now to help our staff and put them at least feeling more comfortable now doing online. In fact, some of them get very excited also now. So that's the situation currently.
So there's some kind of guidance given to all lecturers in terms of how to conduct the assessments and what the university is going to say okay
Yeah,
to.
Sabin.
Hi, Prof. So
Yes.
yeah. So how did you actually start this? So when the directive was given, how did you approach tackling the entire university? Did you pick your champions from each faculty, or did you do like a company university-wide program? Like, do you mind just walking us through what were the steps taken?
Yeah. Well, we were quite fortunate because we have put in place some kind of system in terms of how we run online learning in the USM. We have 26 schools or faculties, and we have actually one, we call it coordinator, e-learning coordinator in each school. And we have actually provided some so-called TOT, train of trainers program for them. And they are empowered actually to also conduct training at their own school. So, and this has been happening since last year in a more aggressive way. So when this thing came, I think early this year in January, so we actually put in all this preparation, mobilize all these coordinators from 26 schools, and we actually do more intensive training. And we have a WhatsApp group where we communicate with all these coordinators.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's how we mobilize actually the coordinators from the 26 school to help us and give us the extra hand to help the lecturers in the school.
Understand. So you kind of selected 26 champions,
Exactly.
got them as your team A, so to speak, and then you got them all trained up.
Yes.
And then it became more like a waterfall or train the trainer approach. And these 26 trainers have direct contact to CDAE, which is your center,
Yes.
via WhatsApp as the main source, so that they can just do live chats in terms of how to help.
Yes. So they actually become the first layer. They will provide assistance. They become the resource person at the school level, where the lecturers or the academic staff can go to for any problems or any issues they have. So not everyone will come to me or to our CDAE, because we have the first layer to address any issues that they might have. Only when they're not able to solve the problem, they will come to us. So that's the kind of structure that we put in. Otherwise, we won't be able to cope. We have almost 2,000 academic staff spread over 3 campuses. In the main campus in the island, Penang Island, we have an engineering campus in the mainland in Nibong Tebal, and the health campus in Kelantan. So can you imagine that? Without this structure, we probably it's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah.
Understand. And what kind of issues, if any, are these 26 champions facing at the moment?
Yeah, of course, it's not all rosy, of course, because there's a lot of issues initially. Also, especially those, as I said, we have about at least 50% of those previously not giving much attention to online learning. Even some of them, a few, maybe not many, have not really logged into our e-learning platform as well. That's the reality, but when the situation really pushed them to do that, then they have to turn to someone to help. So this is where our coordinators at the school level really play their role to facilitate. They play the role to facilitate, to help solving the problem and giving the assistance, giving the motivation, all those things.
I understand.
Yeah.
Let me turn the question a little bit to Adam. Adam, from your experience, which institutions are you seeing that is actually moving online pretty well, or even in the past, things that they did? Were there any initiatives or ideas that you thought like, more unis should be doing it this way?
Well, hey everyone, nice to see you. Good to be here with everyone. Particular Prof. Karim, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
So I think overall, there aren't many. There aren't many great case studies on entire institutions moving online and delivering quality courses across the board. I think it's very challenging. And what's typically happened over the years is online learning has been seen as supplementary to the face-to-face experience. So the idea is that, the core of it is face-to-face, and you have materials online, you have resources, you have some assessments, but the core is face-to-face, and students are coming for a face-to-face experience. Now, when institutions have moved online very successfully, usually they've sort of taken specific programs or degrees or even short courses or micro-credentials, but very specific ones, and really built those to a very high standard and put those online. So rather than just using online education or online learning as supplementary, what they do is they take the entire course or the degree program and they redesign it, sometimes from scratch, so that it takes advantage of the technology and the pedagogy that you can implement online. So what that might look like is, instead of having a lecturing experience, you might have an activity-based learning experience or a project-based learning experience with a very strong online community of practice, where you have a lot more peer review and discussion rather than face-to-face tutorials and labs and lectures. Now, that process of redesigning the program so that it is more engaging and interactive takes quite a bit of time and effort. And that learning design process is one that many lecturers have probably gone through at some point in their career, but many of them have not done that online. So the challenge we have today is we have a very short period of time for 100% of the courses to move online, when usually the success that we've seen in the past is only when you're taking a small percentage of those and moving them online. Because when you try and move the entire university online, you have to work with not just the early adopters, not just the really eager and excited lecturers. You have to work with everyone, some people who may be reluctant to move as well. So I guess what we see working is where more time and effort has gone into working with and educating the lecturers themselves on what makes an online learning experience work, what kind of educational approach and philosophy are you trying to implement, and maybe selecting some specific programs as showcases, and then working iteratively across the rest of them. So, maybe the first phase, what we all have to do now is just get something online. We might know that first phase is not as good as we'd like it to be, and we have to acknowledge that. Because if we don't, and if we pretend that that is online and that's the best that we can do, then I think it'll leave people with a fairly bad taste of online in the future. So what we want to say is, okay, this is what we can do in the time that's available, but let's see how we can make some small improvements on that. Maybe we can take the first activity of the course and make that really engaging. Or maybe we can, foster discussion in this other area of the course. So I think we take sort of a holistic view. We try and do the best we can in the time available, but then we pick specific parts of the courses where we can, do something pretty cool. And students will say, oh, okay, yeah, that experience in that part of the course was really great. It would be great if the rest of the course was like that, but I understand it would take a lot of time to do that. And we just don't have that time at the moment. But maybe in second semester we would, if we're still at home and we have the whole semester to design our courses.
No, that's great though. In a way, how do you kind of just accept that it's going to take some time? And then what's the quick and dirty way to get online first, and then just start somewhere, and then slowly kind of take and iterate things as we go. Prof, is that another method that you're doing as well in terms of what are you advising your lecturers to start with, especially the ones who've never moved online before? Listening to Adam, like how do you take them step by step?
Well, as Adam said, we don't want to make them feeling overwhelmed initially, especially those who have no experience at all with online learning or very little experience. We want to make them their first experience doing online to be not to say pleasant, but at least not overwhelming. So we try to kind of hold their hand slowly, and this where this where the role of our coordinator at the school level will be very important, because they should be able to offer assistance, even the simplest thing like like uploading the content to the learning platform as well, how to create the activities, how to create a forum, things like that, which for me and for some of those who are very familiar with online, we take it for granted. But for those who have very little experience online, or in fact, some have a very negative kind of idea about online, we really need to take it to hold their hand very slowly and guide them and show them so that they feel, it's not that difficult. So we want them to have this perception, it's not that difficult. And in fact, some of them now telling me that, okay, we thought that, it's very hard to do online thing, but it's not that difficult. So it turned out become a pleasant experience for them. So that's very important. Yeah.
So, you know, Prof. Karim, one of the, I think one of the most exciting things is when I first attended one of your workshops. And I think that's partly the challenge or maybe the catch-22 here, which is sometimes we actually run a lot of these workshops face-to-face to try and actually showcase what works and what doesn't. And I think those workshops, we get very excited in them. I remember a lot of the ones that you're running. And we can't do that because at the moment we're all online and we have to run things online. But some of the change management, sometimes we previously did face-to-face. So how are you doing that at the university when you can't be in the same room as everyone else, and when you can't run the workshop in such a dynamic way as you previously did?
Yeah, well, it's quite a challenge also. I myself was quite overwhelmed initially because having to mobilize our 26 coordinators, and they are also having issues at their own school. They come back to us, and at the same time we need to get things moving in terms of teaching has to carry on online. So what I do, that's what I started actually doing the online webinar on certain areas that there's an immediate demand from the lecturers. Then at the same time, I do the video recording on certain skill, certain way of doing things and so on. Then I upload to YouTube and share with our coordinators as well as with our staff. So these are the things that we do since we don't have much time, but at the same time we need to provide all the assistance needed. So I provide all this technical assistance through the coordinators, as well as I and my colleague, Dr. Azida. We start to do this tutorial with webinar live, as well as through the content that we create through recording and so on, and share with our staff. And somehow those things really actually help them. Yeah.
So just dovetailing to that, Mohe in a statement said online teaching could only be conducted if all students have access to lectures and all the infrastructure or requirements in place, right? So how does a university or institution decide when is the right time to kind of make that call? Or is there like a benchmark to gauge whether the educator himself or the learner is ready? Like how do you view this as from a USM or from yourself's point of view?
If you remember, 1 week after we started the online teaching, the online classes, then there's a directive from the Ministry of Education that we have to stop online learning.
Mhm.
That came actually as a shock to me personally. I was like, I remember putting a statement in the group, in the WhatsApp group, said, "Oh, I'm going to bang my head against the wall," because I was so kind of frustrated. Why? Because after 1 week, although we don't have everything, we noticed that our lecturers are now getting the momentum, and they're getting some of them getting excited. So when we get this directive, we get a lot of message from our staff that why, we are now excited to do, why we stop. But then it came to our realization, or to our sense that there's a reason for it because of the digital divide issue. So we say, okay, never mind, let's stop for a while, follow the directive. There's a cooling off period. So actually we use that 1 week, stopping all the online teaching. We use that actually to carry on doing the training, doing the consultation, doing the webinar every day, almost like every day.
Yeah.
So there's a blessing in disguise also in that. But now actually the ministry realized that we have to carry on with the online teaching. So how do we address the issue that 10 to 15%, those students that have no connection at all?
Yeah.
So this is where we came out with the idea of creating mechanism or ways to deliver the so-called low bandwidth content to these students that have poor connection. And those without connection at all, we have to find ways like in the old days of correspondence course, if you remember, maybe you don't because you're not from that generation.
Yeah.
Where we can send using the pen drive, we can send through the normal snail mail, those things. Yeah, but no one left behind. That's the basic principle.
Yeah, on that note, we have a question from Mr. Kevin. He's from Masa University. He's asking, how do you counter latency problems during peak hours now that e-learning is being used as the main source? So low bandwidth you were mentioning. Even Adam, if you have a view on this, how to repeat the question, how do you counter all the latency problems during peak hours such that now that e-learning is extremely prevalent?
Is that to Adam or to?
To anyone to take that, because I mean ultimately you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of
let me answer that first. Yes, initially in the first 2 weeks, our server was kind of almost like very, very slow. So we took the step on the technical side, our technical people do whatever necessary in terms of the upgrading of the server, whatnot, those things. So somehow I think things has improved a lot. Again, there's a blessing in disguise on that part, because we can actually expand the capacity and somehow address the issue of latency. It's not 100%, but it's manageable. It's manageable.
Understand. Adam, do you have like little tips or tricks that could help with the whole bandwidth issue?
Yeah, I think this is actually a very challenging issue, and there's two sides to it, two parts to it. One is on the learning platform itself, whether you run it at your university or you use a cloud platform like Open Learning, and the other is on the bandwidth or the internet speed of the end user, the student or the lecturer. Now, both of these have their own challenges. Actually, in Australia at the moment, where I am in the middle of Sydney, there's actually quite a bit of congestion on the internet. And a lot of times it's actually not very fast. So even as I'm doing this Zoom, sometimes it drops in and out. And this is on the fixed line internet access because so many people are using it. Then if you look at on the platform side, there's challenges there as well because everyone will be trying to access the course sometimes at the same time. And they might all be trying to interact or watch a video or work together on a group project or something like that. Now, in some ways, you know, on the platform side, that's a somewhat easier one to resolve. So even for us at Open Learning, we've significantly increased the size of our cluster of servers that we use. So we have dozens of servers in our clusters, and we've had to increase that and increase our bandwidth limits so that everyone is able to use Open Learning at this time. And we have seen a significant increase in traffic. Now, from the student or teacher's perspective, the speed of their internet, that's a more difficult one because it's a lot harder to, you know, put down a new cable or put up a new mobile tower this quickly. So I think what we can all do actually is when we're designing our courses, we have to keep in mind that people will have different bandwidth on their home and their mobile, you know, wherever they are. And we can actually try and design our courses so that they actually use less bandwidth, and that benefits everyone. Because, for example, if you're putting together your online course, and let's say you want to upload a document, and you upload a document that might be a couple megabytes or something, which doesn't seem very large, but everyone's downloading that document at the same time. Now, that just uploading and downloading that document, it's actually not a very good experience, not a very good learning experience from the student's perspective. It's just a static document. So you could actually redesign that into a discussion activity. You could have the key parts of the content on the platform itself, so people don't actually have to download a document. Another example might be instead of having, you know, a video, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour long of the person lecture speaking, you could actually redesign that into an activity-based learning experience where the students go and they find some information on their own, they share it back with the rest of the community, you have a discussion about it, or maybe the student creates something and they share it and you reflect on it in that community. So by trying to redesign the activities so that they're actually less reliant on very large media files, you're actually reducing the bandwidth requirements, but also creating a much more interactive learning experience for the students. So I think keeping in mind the bandwidth requirements when designing the course is actually quite an important element.
And another way to look at it is video is not the only answer when you're kind of designing that course, right? Because video takes up one of the biggest bandwidths for anyone. You creating and uploading that and the student downloading that as well. To Adam's point in terms of how do you redesign that, how do you, so there's a question that came from the panel, the attendees. How do you kind of recreate that? Like, is there an example that you could give in terms of how a trainer who's so used to running a workshop on a face-to-face environment, instead of recording himself and explaining a topic, how would you then try to recreate that environment online with the least amount of bandwidth required?
Yeah, we are so used to create content in the form of video. We take for granted that everyone has access to the internet, high-speed connection, and so on. But with this situation now, knowing that the students are all over the place, some of them have very poor internet connection. So we have, as Adam said, when we design the online course, we have to consider the lowest, so-called the lowest denominator would be those who have a poor internet connection. So this is a challenge. How do we create content in a way that the students with poor connection also can have access? So that's why I have suggested even using WhatsApp or Telegram, because most of the students would have a phone or smartphone. So even with very poor connection, they can still have access to the WhatsApp or Telegram. So we can deliver the online, the lesson through WhatsApp or through Telegram. So I've shown how to, for example, create, a complete lesson. In fact, actually using the WhatsApp, I have a video actually on YouTube. And we can have audio because in the WhatsApp, we have the microphone where we can actually record the audio. Then we can attach the PowerPoint slide in the form of picture. Then we can explain it using the audio. And in fact, actually, even the video, but the video has to be very short, like 1 minute to 3 minutes. And then we have to compress the video. And again, I have the tutorial or the video to show how to do it. Compress the video to make it very light that we can share through the WhatsApp. So it is possible, Sarvin and Adam, I think it's possible to deliver one complete lesson using the WhatsApp or the Telegram to accommodate or to cater for those students with very lowest, bandwidth or low, very slow internet connection.
Oh, that's perfect. For everyone attending, we will post the link to Miriam's lesson in terms of how to recreate in WhatsApp as well. Right after this webinar as well.
I have actually slide also on this, but maybe after we have time later, maybe or you want me to show it now?
Feel free to present that.
I just share the screen. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, I just show the example of, maybe I just want to say that when we design the lesson for online, we have to keep this in mind, that the first thing when we go into online, we have to put the students in mind first. That's the very, very important thing. So let's start with having our students in mind, the best interest in mind. Then in terms of, when we do our teaching online, both the lecturers and the students have to have a different mindset. That's why I always say that there are two things very important when we go online: the skill set and the mindset. Okay, both the lecturers as well as the students. In terms of the skill set, we have learned a new skill to go to be comfortable teaching online. But to me, that's something that can be learned over time. It's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. But the more difficult one is actually the mindset, both the lecturers as well as the student. So on the students' part, I think this is a time where they have to become so-called self-directed learning, or apply the self-directed learning, become more independent learners, which simply means the self-directed learning is a process in which learners take responsibility in understanding their learning needs, establishing their learning goals, and implementing learning strategies and evaluation. This one is actually from Knowles. He talked about the adult learning theory and so on. Mm-hmm. And so when we design our online course or online class, online content, we have to keep in mind for those students who are less fortunate in terms of internet connectivity and so on. So we must consider the lowest denominator. So that is why I urge the lecturers, we can actually deliver our lesson actually even through using the phone, using the WhatsApp, or using the Telegram. So this one of the video, and this video is actually, I was surprised because it's very well accepted. I think now close to 9,000 views, teaching using WhatsApp or Telegram in COVID-19 time, delivering low bandwidth content to everyone with a phone, but poor internet connection. You can find this video on my YouTube channel. And then I also come up with this one only yesterday, I think, how to create a complete lesson using the WhatsApp or Telegram. So you can have text, you can have audio, you can have your PowerPoint slides, you can have even a video, you can have learning activities, you can have assessment as well in one short WhatsApp lesson. And podcast, don't forget. This is a time where we can use podcast, audio podcast. So I have shown also how to create a podcast. I consider podcast as a low bandwidth content, suitable for those with low poor internet connection. And I've shown in this video also how to optimize the video for WhatsApp and Telegram lesson, which is, you can convert to 3GP format or to 360p or 400, even 240p video, which is very light and you can deliver through WhatsApp. So I think that's all for now that I want to share. I have a few more, but let's see how it goes. When come to the relevant topic or question, I can share some more.
No problem. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think it kind of gives you kind of the menu, all the various kinds of tools and items that you can use.
Yeah.
So given the time, what I would like to do is kind of just open up to the Q&A section of the webinar. So we're just going to go through a list of questions that have come up. Adam, this is actually kind of directed to you. This is a question from Diana from MMU. I have 4 hours of class coming up next semester. How do I go about thinking about that? Do I have to do a 4-hour face-to-face online? Or can you suggest an alternative on this?
Oh.
Is there a way of kind of looking at learning hours differently now that we're kind of moving online? Does live represent the learning hours, or can we kind of look at it differently? Prof, happy for you to share as well, if you have a different view on this.
I thought you
I think
directing
Adam,
the question to Adam.
I think, but Adam, I think he is currently offline at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think he's. Yeah, well, 4 hours online, no. It's a big no. You see, we have we call it 2 ways of doing online. I can see 2 Adams on screen now.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. My Zoom actually crashed in the middle.
Oh, I see.
I reopened it.
I thought you have twin brother Adam.
Yeah, I don't know how the other one is there.
Yeah.
Oh well,
Okay.
we'll leave
Okay.
him be.
Yeah.
This is the challenge of doing these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just continue.
Yeah.
No, to deliver 4 hours online, just like we teach in the class, in the face-to-face class, is not encouraged, because it's going to be nobody going to really sit there and listen. Well, we have 2 modes. One is called synchronous, and the other one is called asynchronous. So synchronous is like what we are doing now. We have a face-to-face real-time interaction, and we can see the question, when we can discuss the question, we can address, we can answer in real time. You can have that as part of our online class or online course, but I don't think we can do much, because of those students. We don't want to deprive those students not having high bandwidth connection. So we have to do it sparingly. And what we can do is actually more of the asynchronous, which means that we can create the content, we can record the video, we can record the audio, we can upload the content on our learning platform, or even in the WhatsApp. So the students now can have access to it, doing all the learning activities, everything. Then we can have also a short live synchronous session as well. So it's kind of mixed. To me, more of the asynchronous and less of the synchronous.
Yes, I would add that you can actually make an asynchronous course a lot more engaging and interesting for the students than a synchronous course. Because in many ways, a synchronous course, like a Zoom call, for example, it has, in some ways it combines the worst of both worlds, from face-to-face and online. The disadvantages of face-to-face are sometimes you have to be there in the same location at the same time. Everyone has to rearrange what they're doing, but the benefit is you're with people in the same place and you get spontaneous interaction. You can work together and solve problems. You can really get to know somebody. With doing that same thing online, you have all the disadvantages of time, but none of the advantages of physically being there with the same people. So I think when we're moving online, we have to take advantage of the the technology and really the internet itself, which to me comes down to designing an asynchronous experience that feels live, that feels interactive. And the way you do that is actually by creating much smaller activities that people can go through rather than giving them a lot of passive content. So passive content would be like videos and documents and files, and you will need some of that. But for example, a video really is better used as stimulus material. So you can make it very short and it can introduce a topic and get someone excited and engaged. But the real learning will happen when the student is doing something, when they're actually trying to solve a problem, when they're forming a team with other people in the course, maybe having a discussion, sort of Facebook style, in a platform like Open Learning, when they're actually solving that problem together, coming up with ideas, sharing those ideas with the community, giving feedback to each other. So it's through all those different types of activities that you can actually have a very interesting, very exciting asynchronous experience. So I think that's what we have to try and move towards. In many ways, we've designed our courses so that they fit into the constraints of a face-to-face class that's scheduled for 1 or 2 hours. But when you move online, you can get the same 2 hours or 4 hours of learning time, but you can actually do that through a much smaller set of activities, which will better fit the way students want to work when they're at home. And I'd probably add that a very simple way of doing this, like if you're taking a face-to-face training program or a course and moving it online, the first thing you probably do when you enter a workshop, you enter a class, is you introduce yourself. You say who you are, where you're from, why you're there, and you really want to share something personal about yourself. But it's never something that's marked or graded, right? Like you never get a mark for introducing yourself in the class, or you never, you never assessed on the way your introduction. But you can do the same thing online in that when you first get into the online course, you can have an activity where everyone introduces themselves, shares something about their life and their history, where they're from, why they're excited about the course, what motivated them to take the course. Or maybe they read something online and you can say, what do you actually already know about this subject, before we started? So having those kinds of introductory activities actually does help create a community, because the first thing it does is people get to know each other. And that's one of the most challenging things online, creating that sense of community, because people don't naturally know each other. They're not naturally sitting next to each other. And that can be driven through activities like introductory activities, but also activities woven throughout the entire course itself.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, I think that's a whole different way of explaining that as well, which ties in with Andrew's question actually, is can you replicate training workshops, blended workshops? Can it be delivered fully online on a platform like Open Learning, or does it need a combination of platforms? Andrew, to that question, it really depends on what you're actually trying to achieve in terms of what kind of delivery. If you would like to do live videos like this, or live webinars or sessions with your attendees, you could integrate platforms like Zoom or Google Hangouts with Open Learning to kind of run that, and then use the platforms to run the asynchronous kinds of education and delivery for that matter. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, but I'd say you also don't, it's interesting, like we all fall back on obviously having this sort of virtual face-to-face experience, but it's not always necessary for a lot of courses. So, I guess I've seen courses of any length, and so I can see someone's asked, what's the ideal size of an online class? Well, I've actually seen everything from like a 1 hour long professional development course for teachers, done entirely online, entirely asynchronously, through to fully online master's degrees, for professionals, and everything in between. Now, when you have an accredited program, you typically would have some sort of synchronous interaction with either a group work scenario or a lecture, or maybe you're giving a presentation to your supervisor if there's a research component of the degree as well. But I guess it really comes down to what kind of course you're developing. And a course can be of any length. I think the key thing is really looking at what the learning outcomes are. whether the activities and the projects that you've designed will help the student meet those outcomes, and what the sort of volume of learning requirements are, what the hours of learning requirements are. Because I guess we see, particularly with micro-credentials, we think a micro-credential could be anything from a 2.5-hour long course through to 150 hours. And 150 hours would be equal to one university subject, whereas a 2.5-hour long course might give you points for your professional development, depending on what profession you're in. And those might mix a combination of synchronous and asynchronous, but a lot of online courses I've seen, particularly the most scalable ones, are fully asynchronous experiences, and students actually have a great time in those as well.
Thank you very much, Adam. Yeah, so kind of tells you that there's just multiple ways to look at it as well, because it really depends on what's your objective in terms of delivery and what you're trying to achieve with the content that you're trying to move online. Because we've got a couple of questions as well in terms of this is more targeted at the technical training side. What is the best way to keep a learner motivated, especially someone who's so used to face-to-face? How do you keep learners, especially in the adults? What is the best way to keep them motivated? This can be any one of you that you can take.
I have actually, motivation is one of the very difficult, very challenging aspect. Even in a face-to-face class, we always have that issue, how to motivate our students. If you read the books by Eric Jensen. Eric Jensen is actually an educational psychologist. He said this powerful word about motivation. He said, there's no such thing as unmotivated students, but there are students in an unmotivated state. So it's about the state of the motivation, So I guess in an online environment, we cannot really reproduce exactly what we do in the face-to-face in the online environment. But I strongly believe that we can actually design the online course in such a way, as Adam mentioned, as a series of small activities, interactive activities. You can actually have a kind of a challenge-based kind of learning approach, or even scenario-based learning approach, problem-based learning approach, where you can design series of activity, series of questions that will take the students, from one level to the next level until they are able to solve the questions. This is actually a different mindset. In fact, I have discussed with some of you, Adams, and so on. I'm thinking of a different kind of online course, different kind of MOOC, massive open online course, rather than create an online course that giving content and the student have to go through one by one. But can we, take a different approach where when they step into the online course, they are presented with problems that they need to solve. They are presented with questions. They are presented with challenges that they need to, solve. And by doing that, the process of doing that, they will learn the content, they will learn the concept, they will uncover the so-called the syllabus rather than we cover the syllabus for them. It's a different kind of mindset. If we do that, we can address the issue of motivation, because they are motivated to solve the question, to answer the question. They are motivated to solve the challenges, motivated to solve the problem. So that is one way of how we can address the issue of motivation.
Yeah, and that cuts across any age group for that matter.
Any age group.
Doesn't really matter if you're a kid.
It's just the difference in the kind of learning activities, the kind of problem that we present. For the smaller, lower age group, maybe a different kind of activities. But for the secondary, higher secondary school and the university, a different kind of problem. So I think if we do that, the online course would be seen as, it can be even better than the face-to-face course. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I really agree, Prof.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember one way we used to think about it, I think you might have said this actually, is that at the moment, a lot of times we try and give the student everything they'll ever need to know up front, and then we ask them to remember it. Whereas a better approach is always to actually start with the problem they're trying to solve. And then the student will actually find the part of that content, whether it's a textbook or it's on the internet or somewhere else, and it'll find what they need to solve that problem. So I think that's quite an exciting place. Actually, that ties into one of the other questions. It's just a few questions that have just come in around assessment. And I think online assessment, online examination is it's a very big topic in and of itself. But I thought I'd touch on it briefly, if you don't mind. Because I was thinking that, in Prof, in what you just described, what you have is a series of activities and projects and a lot of interaction data. Now, this is one of the advantages of being online, which is that a lot of those interactions, a lot of that project work is automatically captured in the platform that you're using. So in open learning, for example, we actually capture all what we call the evidence of learning. So every time a student shares what they've done in the class, or they post something, or they reflect, all of that data is captured. Now, in the past, we'd always think about running exams to determine if somebody knew something and had met the outcomes. Well, you can still do that, but I think one of the big advantages of online is actually capturing all of that evidence as the student is going through the course. Now, the way that we've tried to design the assessment system in open learning is quite unique in that it has an outcome-based approach to assessment. So the idea is when you're designing your course, you set up the learning outcomes, the course learning outcomes, and throughout the course, as you're creating all these activities, whether it's the introductory activities, the project-based learning, reflection, scenarios, you actually tag all of those with the learning outcome. So you're effectively mapping the activities to the project, to the learning outcomes that the course is meant to address. Now, what that allows you to do is actually automatically generate an assessment report which shows you for every student in the course all of the evidence of learning attached to those learning outcomes. So if you think about when you would traditionally do assessments or assignments, you'd have a one-to-one mapping between a mark and an assignment, for example. So you have 3 assignments, you have 3 marks, mark for each assignment, you do the weightings and the alignment, and then you get the result. Whereas in this approach, you actually have a many-to-many mapping between learning activities and projects through to learning outcome. What you're really doing is actually saying, okay, well, I need to know if this student has met, course learning outcome number 2. And to do that, I need to look at these 10 activities. And you can see all the work from those 10 activities right there. Now, that's something that's, I think, only possible when the course is structured and designed online in this more asynchronous way. But that's actually quite powerful. And it means you can handle formative assessment automatically almost, or very easily, to facilitate that approach. So I think that's quite an interesting way to do it. You could still have face-to-face exams or things at the end of it. I think, one way instead of doing an exam is also to do a presentation to the facilitator or the teacher. Because I think in that conversation between the teacher and the student, in 10 minutes, they'll know if that student has, met the outcomes of the course. They'll be able to tell, as any great teacher would be able to do.
Sarvin, if you allow me, I want to share one slide. This is actually the model that we can use to design any online course or online class. I will share my screen now.
No problem at all.
Yeah. So can you see the slide on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So this the name of this model is Geely. I'm trying to move this around. Geely Salmon's 5-stage model. I don't know whether Adam have seen this, but
yes.
Yeah,
she's from Australia, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. This is actually quite popular. Basically, when we design any particular class online, these are the 5 different stages or the 5 different things that we have to consider. The first one in terms of access and motivation. So you can see the motivation there. In terms of how to get the students, securing access to and familiarity with platform and tools, especially if they are introduced to a new platform. Then online socialization, building sense of social presence and community. This Adam mentioned just now is actually very important to create a sense of community, a sense of belonging to that particular community in the online group, online class. So we can start with a nice ice-breaking activity, then some other activities that would really get them to really close together, and they can work together collaboratively and comfortably. Then the third stage there is on the information exchange. So this is actually how we can leverage on the community that we have formed, so that the conversation, the collaboration, the teamwork, any activities that the teacher actually designed can now happen easily, because there is a communication happening between the students through peer sharing, peer conversation, and so on. And number 4 there is knowledge construction. And this is what how we can leverage on the constructivist approach, where all the learning activities, we can have series of small learning activities, the challenge-based activities, and so on, problem-based. But every single activities would allow the student to construct their own learning based on the learning outcome and create their own meaning, and you take them to the high level in the Bloom taxonomy. Then, of course, in the number 5 there's the supporting element that we need to have and create in the ecosystem, or the online ecosystem in the course. So there's one model, and very quickly, I just want to show this one. This is in my online course, my MOOC on Open Learning platform. I will share the link below. The title of the course is Engaging Online Learners. And those who have been teaching online should know this, or those in distant learning. This is a community of inquiry theoretical framework. There are 3 parts there: social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. I don't have time to really deliberate on this, but if we learn all this in this framework, we should be able to design very engaging educational experience, online experience for our students. So that's all my sharing for the time being. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much. It kind of helps people understand that there's a whole theory behind this whole thing.
Yes, yeah.
Because in theory, you're redesigning a lot of your material because it's a new way of reaching your learners, both from a university perspective as well as your training employees perspective. So guys, I'm wary of the time. We are going to end the webinar here. We will post out this webinar. We will be sending everyone an email. We will send you a recording of the webinar for your keeping. We will also try to answer as many questions as we can via email, as well as through a call with you post the webinar, in case we didn't get to any of your questions and answers. Feel free to ask as many questions as you like here, but for the purposes of the webinar, we will end it officially right now. But a couple of us are going to stay back. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask it here. Myself, Prof. Karim, or Adam will answer a few more as we go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for joining this webinar.
Yes. Thank you. Have fun creating your courses. All the best.
We really appreciate everyone taking the time. And I hope everyone learned a few things from Prof. Karim and Adam. Just different ways of looking at how do you move your university or your institution online. I'm pretty sure there's a whole lot more questions that you may have. We'll be happy to take questions here. Alternatively, we will be sending you that email, and we'll be happy to answer questions or even schedule a call with you to kind of help you move online as well. So we look forward to working with you and try to move everything online, especially in this period that we're all going through together. So while we're still here, Prof and Adam are still here. If you have any questions that you may like to ask. I've got one question from Susie. She's from UOW KDU, Malaysia. In the preparation of online lessons, sorry, to confirm, when you're preparing for your online lesson, it may be daunting, it may be scary, where some academics are not ready. What would you advise academics who are starting out on where to start? So if I'm you, I'm going to create an online course. If someone comes to you, what would you tell them to do?
Yeah, so I'll start briefly. Then Prof has much more experience than I do actually designing courses. So what we do is we actually we do the planning process on paper. We don't actually put anything online until we're happy with the structure of the course and the types of activities we've come up with. So we actually do all the brainstorming. I mean, either on paper or face-to-face or virtually in discussion. Like this. And in that, we actually map out, we start the learning outcomes, we map out, okay, what are the kinds of activities we want? What sort of field do we want in the course? Who are our target learners? Are we targeting working professionals? Are we targeting, first-year university students? Why are they taking this course? Are they forced to take this course as part of their degree? Are they, motivated to take it because of their work or because of they want to change careers? So we look at all of those factors, and then we try and work out on paper sort of what activities would actually engage the students, what types of projects we want in the course to meet the outcomes. So I'd say probably the best thing to do is actually start brainstorming and writing down your ideas, and then think about the way you taught face-to-face and the activities you ran face-to-face and which ones worked, which ones didn't, and try and just put those down on paper first, and then map those to the outcomes, and then start that brainstorming process. But you actually don't need to rush and try and create an online course immediately. Even if you only have a few days, spend the first day actually planning on paper, because I think you'll get a better outcome at the end of it.
Yep. So back to basics, right? In Malaysia, we call it rangka karangan. How do you start that whole?
Maybe if you're a prof, it all happens in your head very quickly, so you just know exactly what to do.
Well, I think we have mentioned most of the important points there, but in USM actually we have we conduct workshops for those who want to create their online course, and we provide also the technical assistance. We even provide technical assistance in terms of how to create content. Even if they want to use the studio, they will come to our studio, and we will help them recording the video. So I think it's very important to make sure that the lecturer or the staff, they feel that they have all the assistance needed to facilitate the process of creating the online course, because otherwise they will feel helpless. They will feel that they don't get good support, and maybe they will give up halfway. So it's very important to really take them, guide them, and provide all the assistance needed for them.
It kind of takes a team. It's a community of practice in terms of getting support from each other, especially during this time. For anyone looking for help as well in that sense, Open Learning as well will be happy to help you and support you. Feel free to drop us an email at malaysia@openlearning.com. We'll be happy to kind of call you in and support you in terms of how to think about moving your business online or even moving your courses online. On top of that, we also have a series of free courses that you can take in terms of how to build your course, how to start from even thinking about it, in terms of getting the basics of the pedagogy, all the way down to actually building the course on Open Learning and even facilitating that. These are all free courses that you may take right away. We will share a link with you after the webinar as well.
I have followed the course, how to create a world-class course, something like that. It's very well designed course. Very good. highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Thank you very much, Prof.
We'll share the links.
We'll share the
Yeah.
link after this. I got another question from Yu Chong Hui. Can we do this for seminars? Can we do this for seminars such cybercrime seminar? If you're asking how do we redesign a seminar online, you can actually do that using a platform like Open Learning. In terms of how do you redesign that is integrating that with some kind of live recording of the conversation that you're trying to have, and then integrating that with different communication and engaging tools that allows people to discuss their ideas, to people to allow them to participate in the conversation as well. You could do that via chats. You could do that via people actively submitting an activity that you want them to do. So there are various ways to redesign that, but it is possible to kind of do that. Prof. or Adam, have you seen anyone use Facebook as a platform for teaching currently, beside WhatsApp and Telegram?
Actually, it's very interesting. When we first started Open Learning, the first time we built it, we were thinking a lot about Facebook, and there's actually some research that's been done on, why, like what elements of Facebook are useful, but actually why it's not a good idea to use Facebook for learning. And I think one of the things we realized and found out was that the challenge you have is that a lot of people would like to separate their personal life from their education. And Facebook is sort of a place where you have a lot of, in some cases, a lot of very personal things. And you may not want to be friends with everyone in your course. So in many ways, the things you want from Facebook, the ease of interaction, the discussion, the chat, those kinds of things, those are very useful tools, but they need to be anchored around the content of the course and the activities. Just having them on their own doesn't necessarily lead to a positive community. So I think what we worked out early on was we needed, when we designed Open Learning, we need to take some of the elements of Facebook, some of the way in which it handles discussions and things like that. And we want to think about how that could be done in an education context, but also then make sure that the course itself is a very private space where students feel comfortable, sharing and discussing things about the course without worrying about somebody finding their past, 10 years of social history, through the process. So it's possible to do things in Facebook, but it is risky in that sense from a student privacy perspective.
Yeah, it's like adding someone that you don't want on your Facebook friend list.
Yeah,
it's a whole different world. We're gonna take one or two more questions, and then we'll call it for today. Prof, this question is directed to you, especially in your idea of WhatsApp as a means of delivery. How do you keep track of the learning environment, and from an audit perspective, is this workable?
How do I keep track?
So if you're going to use WhatsApp as a means of delivery,
okay.
The audit, or in terms of the actual lesson going on and being carried out, and how do you keep track of that? Is there an audit situation that you need to be mindful of as well?
Well, to be honest, that's the idea that I propose to address the issue of low bandwidth. But I myself have not used WhatsApp extensively for this purpose. But I do use WhatsApp to complement my flipped classroom class. But when we use it seriously as the only way to deliver our learning content to the student in this situation now, I think we need to create two WhatsApp groups. One is just specifically to deliver the lesson. Then the other one is where the students can post their answers, can post their, the assignment, everything, can have interaction, can pose a question, everything in the other group. So let's say we have a small lesson. In that lesson, we ask the student to do some small activity. So they can post that, respond to that activity in the other group. it's not very convenient, but
Yep.
we don't want the WhatsApp with the lesson to be cluttered with other things. So when we have the other group, we can actually keep this, capture this, and print out everything that we have as evidence for in case of audit.
Yeah.
To show that. Yeah.
That's a great way. So you kind of keep that separate items.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one is for actual for formal means of delivery. The
Yeah.
second is a little bit more safe space in terms of
Yes.
conversations. Let it flow.
Yeah.
That's a really good way. We got one more question. This is coming from Steph. I'm from a preschool setting. Can e-learning is e-learning suitable for the younger age group? Would you be able to share how we can do online learning with young children?
Personally, I don't have any experience with the preschool student, but the e-learning, the platform is just the place where we can create the online course. The difference is actually in how we design the course for that age and the kind of activities that we create. The interactivity, I imagine for preschool, we need to create more like activity-based or project-based kind of course. Not so much giving content, but doing a series of activities for them. So it is, to me, it is totally possible to do it online. But of course, at the early stage, we have to give more guidance to the kids how to use the platform. But perhaps I think they will learn very quickly. They will learn very quickly, even become better than the teacher. So the answer is possible.
Possible. Yep.
Yeah.
Understand. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here today.
Okay.
I want to say thank you very much to both our panelists, Prof. Karim and Adam. Thank you so much for your time and really appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing with us. To everyone joining the webinar, thank you very much for joining us. We hope that this kind of helped you in terms of framing all the questions that you may have had. For any questions that we did not answer, we will respond to you via email or reach out to you personally and try to get you there. To kind of sum this up, we will drop an email to everyone here as a recording for the webinar today, in case you want to share that or in case you would like to recap in terms of what was said. We look forward to kind of doing this more. Also, please feel free to drop in suggestions in terms of different topics that you would like us to bring up as well. We aim to do this webinar more often and try to help people move online, especially in this current climate that we're in today. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Prof, don't end the webinar first.
Okay.
You can end the YouTube live, but don't
Okay.
don't end the meeting. Yes.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Prof, can you make me the host, please?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I have
Thank you.
changed. I don't know what
All right.
happened.